They say the eyes are the window to the soul. But what happens when the window stays closed? When a glance feels too heavy, too exposing, almost unbearable? In a world that equates eye contact with confidence, honesty, and connection, avoiding it is often misunderstood. It is labeled as weakness, as insecurity, sometimes even as deceit. But beneath that simple act of looking away, there is often a quiet storm unfolding. What if avoiding eye contact is not a flaw, but a language? A silent adaptation shaped by experiences no one sees. This is not about shyness. It is about what your nervous system remembers, even when you don't. Let's begin. There is a moment that passes unnoticed in most conversations. A fraction of a second. Someone looks up and someone else looks away. It happens in classrooms, in crowded streets, across dinner tables, and in quiet one-on-one exchanges. Not dramatic, not loud, almost invisible. But for the one who looks away, it is not small at all. Because that moment is not just about where the eyes go, it is about what the body feels. You may notice it in yourself, a sudden pull to glance down, to focus on your hands, your phone, the space between words. Not because you are distracted, but because something inside you tightens. And it happens quickly, so quickly that it rarely feels like a choice. People often assume it means disinterest, or lack of confidence, or even dishonesty. But those interpretations are surface level. They miss the quiet complexity underneath. Because avoiding eye contact is rarely about the other person. It is about what happens within you when connection becomes too direct. Eye contact is intense. It holds attention. It creates a sense of being seen, not just physically, but emotionally. And for some, that feeling does not land as warmth. It lands as pressure, like standing too close to a fire, not enough to burn, but enough to make you instinctively step back. So you look away, not to disconnect, but to regulate. There is often an unspoken rhythm to it. Look, hold for a second, then retreat. A quiet balancing act between wanting to stay present and needing space. Have you ever felt that tension? The desire to engage, yet a subtle urge to escape at the same time? It can feel confusing, even frustrating, because part of you knows nothing is wrong. The person in front of you is not a threat. The situation is safe. And yet, your body does not fully agree. It reacts as if something deeper is at stake. So the gaze drops again, not dramatically, just enough to create distance. And over time, this becomes familiar. Not something you consciously think about, but something you do, automatically, like a reflex shaped by repetition. Others may never notice the pattern, or they may misinterpret it entirely. But within you, it carries meaning. Because this quiet avoidance is not random, it is a pattern. And like all patterns, it has a history. No behavior appears without a beginning, even the quiet ones, especially the quiet ones. Avoiding eye contact often traces back to moments that did not seem significant at the time. Small interactions, subtle dynamics, repeated enough to shape something deeper. A child looks up, seeking connection, but the response they receive is not warmth. Maybe it's criticism, a sharp tone, a look that feels too intense, too heavy. Or perhaps it's absence, eyes that do not meet theirs at all, conversations that never quite land. In those moments, something delicate begins to form. The brain starts asking a question it cannot yet put into words. Is it safe to be seen? And slowly, it learns its answer. In some environments, eye contact becomes associated with discomfort, with being judged, with being corrected rather than understood. So the gaze softens, then lowers, not out of defiance, but out of adaptation. Because children are not born avoiding connection, they move toward it, they seek it instinctively. But when connection feels unpredictable or overwhelming, they begin to protect themselves in subtle ways. Sometimes eye contact becomes linked to authority, to power dynamics where looking directly feels like exposure. In certain households, looking into someone's eyes may even feel like crossing a line, too bold, too vulnerable, too much. So the body learns restraint. Other times, the emotional environment is simply too intense. Unspoken tension, unresolved conflict, feelings that fill the room but are never named. In those spaces, eye contact does not feel neutral. It feels like stepping into something unclear, something heavy. So the safest option becomes distance. Even a small distance, just enough to stay out of the center of attention. And this pattern does not announce itself. It builds quietly, moment by moment, interaction by interaction, until one day it is no longer something you learned. It is something you do, automatically, naturally, without question. And as time passes, the original reasons begin to fade. You may not remember the exact moments, the exact looks, the exact feelings, but your body does. It carries the imprint. So when someone meets your eyes in the present, your response is not only about now. It is shaped by everything that came before. This is how patterns survive, not through memory, but through feeling. And what feels familiar, even if uncomfortable, often feels safer than the unknown. There's a part of the mind that doesn't wait for logic. It doesn't ask for permission. It simply reacts. Deep within the brain, a small structure is constantly scanning the environment, watching, interpreting, deciding. This is where emotional meaning is assigned, long before conscious thought arrives. And for some, eye contact does not register as neutral. It registers as intensity. Because direct gaze carries weight. It signals attention. It invites closeness. It exposes subtle expressions that are difficult to hide from. To a calm nervous system, this feels like connection. But to a sensitive or conditioned one, it can feel like pressure, like standing too close to a fire. Not enough to burn, but enough to make you instinctively step back. So you look away, not to disconnect, but to regulate. There is often an unspoken rhythm to it. Look, hold for a second, then retreat. A quiet balancing act between wanting to stay present and needing space. Have you ever felt that tension? The desire to engage, yet a subtle urge to escape at the same time? It can feel confusing, even frustrating, because part of you knows nothing is wrong. The person in front of you is not a threat. The situation is safe. And yet, your body does not fully agree. It reacts as if something deeper is at stake. So the gaze drops again. Not dramatically, just enough to create distance. And over time, this becomes familiar. Not something you consciously think about, but something you do, automatically, like a reflex shaped by repetition. Others may never notice the pattern, or they may misinterpret it entirely. But within you, it carries meaning, because this quiet avoidance is not random, it is a pattern, and like all patterns, it has a history. No behavior appears without a beginning, even the quiet ones, especially the quiet ones. Avoiding eye contact often traces back to moments that did not seem significant at the time. Small interactions, subtle dynamics, repeated enough to shape something deeper. A child looks up, seeking connection, but the response they receive is not warmth. Maybe it's criticism, a sharp tone, a look that feels too intense, too heavy. Or perhaps it's absence, eyes that do not meet theirs at all, conversations that never quite land. In those moments, something delicate begins to form. The brain starts asking a question it cannot yet put into words. Is it safe to be seen? And slowly, it learns its answer. In some environments, eye contact becomes associated with discomfort, with being judged, with being corrected rather than understood. So the gaze softens, then lowers, not out of defiance, but out of adaptation. Because children are not born avoiding connection. They move toward it. They seek it instinctively. But when connection feels unpredictable or overwhelming, they begin to protect themselves in subtle ways. Sometimes eye contact becomes linked to authority, to power dynamics,
where looking directly feels like exposure. In certain households, looking into someone's eyes may even feel like crossing a line. Too bold, too vulnerable, too much. So the body learns restraint. Other times, the emotional environment is simply too intense. Unspoken tension, unresolved conflict, feelings that fill the room but are never named. In those spaces, eye contact does not feel neutral. It feels like stepping into something unclear, something heavy. So the safest option becomes distance, even a small distance, just enough to stay out of the center of attention. And this pattern does not announce itself. It builds quietly, moment by moment, interaction by interaction, until one day it is no longer something you learned, it is something you do, automatically, naturally, without question. And as time passes, the original reasons begin to fade. You may not remember the exact moments, the exact looks, the exact feelings, but your body does. It carries the imprint. So when someone meets your eyes in the present, your response is not only about now, it is shaped by everything that came before. This is how patterns survive, not through memory, but through feeling. And what feels familiar, even if uncomfortable, often feels safer than the unknown. There is a part of the mind that does not wait for logic. It does not ask for permission. It simply reacts. Deep within the brain, a small structure is constantly scanning the environment, watching, interpreting, deciding. This is where emotional meaning is assigned, long before conscious thought arrives. And for some, eye contact does not register as neutral. It registers as intensity. Because direct gaze carries weight. It signals attention. It invites closeness. It exposes subtle expressions that are difficult to hide from. To a calm nervous system, this feels like connection, but to a sensitive or conditioned one, it can feel like pressure, like standing under a spotlight without preparation. So the brain reacts, not dramatically, not in a way others can easily see, but internally something shifts. Heart rate may rise slightly, breathing becomes shallow, muscles tighten just enough to create discomfort, and the mind begins to search for escape quietly. Not because there is danger in front of you, but because something inside you interprets intensity as something to manage. This is the silent alarm. It does not scream, it whispers, a subtle signal that says, "This is too much." And in response, the body does what it has learned to do. It reduces the input. It looks away. Eye contact, in this sense, is not just visual. It is emotional data. Micro-expressions, shifts in tone, unspoken reactions. For someone whose system is already alert, this can feel overwhelming, like trying to read too many signals at once. So the brain simplifies the situation. It removes the most intense element, the gaze. And with it, some of the pressure dissolves. Have you ever noticed how looking away brings a small sense of relief? Not complete calm, but enough space to breathe again. That is not weakness, it is regulation, a system trying to find balance in real time. But here's the quiet complexity. The more often this pattern repeats, the more the brain begins to associate eye contact with discomfort by default. Not because it always is, but because it has been enough times before. So the response becomes faster, more automatic, until it happens before you even realize it, a reflex shaped by experience. This is how the brain protects you, not by understanding the full truth of the present, but by remembering the emotional weight of the past. And sometimes it chooses distance, even when connection is safe. There is a quiet contradiction that lives beneath this pattern, one that is rarely spoken but deeply felt. A part of you wants connection, wants to be understood, wants to feel present with another human being, and yet another part pulls away, not loudly, not forcefully, just enough to create distance. This is where the conflict begins, because avoiding eye contact is not always about disinterest. Often it exists alongside a genuine desire to engage. You listen, you care, you want to stay, but something within you hesitates, as if being fully seen carries a kind of risk. Eye contact does something subtle but powerful. It removes the layers. It makes interactions more real, more immediate, more exposed. And for someone who's learned to manage their inner world carefully, that level of openness can feel unsettling. So the mind creates a compromise. Stay in the conversation, but reduce the intensity. Look nearby. Focus on movement. Let the eyes drift just enough to soften the moment. From the outside, it may look like avoidance, but from within, it feels like balance. A way to remain present without becoming overwhelmed.
Have you ever noticed how eye contact can make emotions feel stronger? A simple question suddenly feels deeper. A pause feels heavier. A reaction feels more visible. It is not just about seeing the other person. It is about feeling seen in return. And that's where the tension lives. Because being seen is both a human need and a vulnerable state. It invites connection, but it also invites interpretation. What if something is misunderstood? What if something is judged? What if something is revealed that you're not ready to share? These questions do not always appear clearly in the mind, but they exist, quietly influencing your response. So the gaze shifts again, not to disappear, but to protect a boundary that feels necessary. And over time, this becomes an internal rhythm. Approach, then retreat. Engage, then soften. A continuous movement between closeness and safety. This is not inconsistency, it is adaptation. A system trying to honor two needs at once, the need to connect and the need to feel secure while doing so. And until both feel possible at the same time, the conflict remains, unseen by others, but deeply felt within. There comes a moment when something shifts, not externally, but internally, a quiet noticing. It may happen in the middle of a conversation, when you catch yourself looking away again, or when someone gently says, "You don't look at me when you talk." And for a second, everything pauses, not with shame, but with awareness, because what was once automatic becomes visible. You begin to see the pattern, the way your eyes move, the way your body subtly retreats, the way certain moments feel heavier than others. And a question forms. Why? Not as criticism, but as curiosity. This is where understanding begins, because awareness does not demand change, it simply reveals what has always been there. You start to notice when it happens more often, with strangers or familiar faces, during silence or emotional conversations, when attention is on you or when you feel uncertain. Patterns begin to connect, and slowly what once felt random starts to make sense. You realize it is not about eye contact alone, it's about what eye contact represents: attention, presence, exposure.
and perhaps in certain moments, a feeling of being unprepared to hold all of that at once. This realization is not loud. It does not come with immediate answers, but it creates space. Space between the reaction and your understanding of it. And in that space, something important happens. The behavior loses its mystery. It is no longer something wrong with you. It becomes something meaningful about you, a reflection of how your mind and body have learned to navigate the world. And with that shift, the internal dialogue begins to soften. Instead of asking, "What is wrong with me?" you begin to ask, "What is this trying to protect?" That question changes everything, because it moves you away from judgment and toward understanding. And understanding doesn't rush. It observes. It listens. It allows complexity to exist without forcing it into simple labels. Have you ever noticed how something feels different once you understand it? The discomfort may still be there, the pattern may still appear, but it no longer feels as confusing or as overwhelming, because now you are not just reacting, you are witnessing. And sometimes that's the first step toward change, without even trying to change at all.
Change, when it comes to something so deeply patterned, rarely arrives as a sudden transformation. It does not force the eyes to hold still. It does not demand a new version of you overnight. Instead, it begins quietly, in moments where you notice and choose not to turn away immediately. Not as a test, not as pressure, but as a small act of presence. Because learning to maintain eye contact is not really about the eyes. It is about what happens inside you while they remain steady. The discomfort does not disappear at once. It lingers, like heat that takes time to cool. But something shifts in how you relate to it. You begin to stay just a second longer, and in that second, your system learns something new. That intensity does not always lead to harm. That being seen does not always lead to judgment. It is not about convincing the mind with logic. It is about allowing the body to experience safety gradually. Have you ever noticed how unfamiliar calm can feel at first? Almost suspicious, as if something must go wrong eventually. That is because the body remembers what the mind has already forgotten. So instead of forcing comfort, you begin to tolerate the unfamiliar. You let the moment exist, a brief eye contact, a pause without escape, and then, if needed, you look away gently, not as avoidance, but as pacing. This is where the shift becomes subtle but powerful, because the pattern is no longer automatic, it becomes intentional. You are no longer being pulled away, you are choosing when to step back. That difference changes everything. It restores a sense of control without force. And slowly, over time, the nervous system adapts. What once felt overwhelming begins to feel manageable. What once triggered tension begins to soften. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough to notice. Enough to stay a little longer next time. This is not about becoming someone who never looks away. It is about becoming someone who is not afraid of staying, even briefly, even imperfectly. Because presence is not measured in duration, it is measured in willingness. And every moment you choose to remain, even for a second, you are teaching yourself something quiet and powerful. That connection does not have to be escaped. It can be experienced at your own pace. Not all connection is spoken, and not all presence is held through steady gaze. There is a quiet assumption in the world that eye contact is the ultimate proof of confidence, honesty, and emotional openness. But human experience is rarely that simple, because the eyes do not just express, they also reveal. And for some, that revelation feels too raw, too immediate, too unfiltered. So connection finds other ways to exist, in the tone of a voice, in the pauses between words, in the way someone listens fully, even without looking directly. Have you ever felt understood by someone who wasn't looking at you the entire time? Have you ever sensed sincerity without constant eye contact? Because presence is not a single behavior, it is a felt experience. And the language of the eyes is only one dialect among many. For some, eye contact comes easily. It feels natural, effortless. For others, it is something more complex, a space where emotion and awareness meet all at once. And that complexity does not make it wrong. It makes it human. There is a quiet beauty in learning your own rhythm, to understand when you need closeness and when you need space, to recognize that looking away is not always disconnection. Sometimes it is a way of staying present without becoming overwhelmed. The world may continue to measure connection in simple terms, in eye contact, in posture, in visible confidence. But your experience does not have to follow that script. Because connection is not something you perform, it is something you feel. And feeling does not always look the way others expect. So the question shifts. Not, why can't you hold eye contact, but what does connection feel like for you? And in that question, there is permission. Permission to exist without forcing yourself into a mold that was never designed for your nervous system. Permission to connect in ways that feel safe, authentic, and real. Because in the end, the goal is not to perform connection perfectly. It is to experience it honestly. Even if your eyes wander sometimes, even if your gaze softens and returns in its own time. Because what matters is not how long you look, but how deeply you feel. If this reflection made something inside you feel seen, if parts of it felt quietly familiar, then perhaps this was never just about eye contact. Perhaps it was about the deeper experience of being perceived, of navigating closeness in a way that your system has learned, slowly and carefully. There is nothing broken in that, nothing that needs to be rushed or forced into change. Because even in avoidance, there is intelligence, a history, a reason your mind and body chose protection when it needed to. And you are not alone in that experience. There are many who listen more than they look, who feel deeply even when their gaze drifts, who are present in ways that are not always visible at first glance. If you'd like to stay connected to a space like this, a place where quiet patterns are understood, where the hidden corners of the human mind are explored gently, you are welcome here. And if you feel comfortable sharing, you can leave your thoughts below. Not because you have to, but because your words might make someone else feel a little less alone. Take care of yourself. You deserve gentleness.